Hi, I'm Rebecca Jenkins. Welcome to the video where I'm sharing techniques, tips, strategies and ideas to achieve high performance, success and results in business. These videos are a culmination of my 25 years in business, having grown a company to achieve sales of £55 million and employing over 1,000 team members and colleagues. It's inevitable that when you're in business, there's going to come a time when you need to have a difficult conversation with a member of your team or with a colleague. And in these 8 steps, I'm taking you through the structure and some techniques and ideas for making that conversation professional and well considered. The first thing that I suggest that you do, and in my experience, there's some things that you need to do before you have that conversation, a bit of planning, a little bit of preparation, is to actually think about the purpose of the meeting. Why is it important that you have this conversation? What do you need to achieve as a result of it? Is it to hear the other person's perspective? Is it to get some more detail? And crucially, am I doing this in the best interests of the business? That's always an acid test for me. Am I doing this because it's important to the business to have this conversation? And it sort of springs to mind one of those difficult conversations that I had to have once with a senior manager of the team that was running an outsourced distribution contract for a retail client. And they'd gone to an event, a business event with the client. They had a bit too much to drink and they'd been rude to the client. And the client had come on the phone asking for that manager to be removed from the contract. And that was a hard conversation because this contract manager was such a good performer, delivered a fantastic job for the client. But here I had the client being really adamant that they didn't want this individual on the contract anymore. They'd overstepped the mark, they'd been rude, and there was no way they wanted them back on the premises. So in that instance, I had to have that conversation with the individual. It was in the best interests of the business. So thinking about the purpose, your objective, what you want to get from the conversation, and thinking about your key message. What is it that you want to say? And also to think about how they might react as well, because that will help you to kind of get your message clear, be focused, and just kind of have your message thinking about how they might react to it, how you might need to respond, things that you might need to say as a result. When you're in the meeting, there are some key things to consider. Make sure you're doing active listening. So you're asking questions and you're listening to their response and you're taking what they say into consideration. And does it change things? Do they have a different perspective or a different take on it? 9 times out of 10, their view will be different from the view that maybe you've heard or what somebody else has told you. Ask questions to get clarity and make sure you make notes of what's being discussed. I think it's also important to show a bit of empathy when you're in that meeting. You're challenging an individual about their behaviours and their actions, and they could be upset about it, they could be angry about it. And if you can just say, I understand why you're angry, or I appreciate how you're feeling, it's just helping to show that you can resonate, you've got a bit of empathy with them, you can understand, and it just helps to kind of soften the meeting a little bit. I know you've got a strong message to give, but it just helps to make the whole thing just a little bit easier to deal with. And the 5th point is always be clear about what your actions are going to be. What are you going to do as a result of this conversation? I often think it's good to take a bit of time out to reflect and you may want to discuss it with somebody else. You may want to speak to your HR manager about it. You might want to speak to a colleague about it. You might just want to get a third opinion from somebody else. And it also shows that you're taking it seriously and you're going to reflect on what the individual has said. You're not going to jump to a conclusion. You're not going to jump to any actions. You want to think about it. You just want to reflect on it. And so that's important, I think, just to take a little bit of time out, but don't leave the individual kind of hanging, waiting for when you're going to get back to them. Couldn't be anything worse. If you put yourself in their shoes, you'd want to know when they were going to come back to you, how quickly, and what they were going to do as a result. So be clear, say what you're going to do next. Maybe it's take time out to consider, which I highly recommend you do, and say when you're going to get back to them, and don't make that a long time frame. Maybe later in the day, at the latest the following morning, but just be very specific about how you'll consider it, when you'll consider it, and when you'll get back to them. In the meantime, it's always good to send some notes out which detail the conversation, so that the other person can consider those notes, and if they think anything's not quite right or it's not an accurate reflection of the discussion, they can let you know. Let's say that to them. If you don't think this is right, please let me have any amends or anything that you felt went a bit differently. So send out notes to the meeting. And point 7 is to reconvene the session. And at that session, you're going to very clearly state what actions are going to be taken and make it very clear about what you want the individual to do as a result. There cannot be any ambiguity about this. You know, clearly state what they need to do differently and what action is going to be taken. And then confirm that in writing again, so it's clear. If necessary, put a note on their HR file or whatever action you're taking internally, but make it clear, put it in writing. And if you follow this process, you've handled it professionally, you've been considerate, and you've given it consideration. And even if they don't like the outcome or the actions that you're agreeing to take at the end, at least you can both agree that you've followed a process and you've given it due consideration and you've treated it fairly. So it's inevitable that in your career, as a manager, as a leader, as an MD in growing a business, you're going to have times when you have to have these difficult conversations. And with these 8 steps, follow these and you will have handled it with professionalism. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one for more techniques, tips and ideas for high performance, success and results in business.